Hi, everybody. Welcome to ASIS TV with your host, Chuck Harold of SecurityGuideTV.com and SecurityGuideRadio.com. My next guest, Mr. Paul Drucker. He's lecturing at GSX. He's going to be speaking about the Australian perspective on a security systems installation project. Now, this is kind of interesting. I always wonder about Down Under, especially since that non-terrorist terrorist event you had a few years ago. So, Mr. Paul, tell us what's going on in Australia and how there's so much difference between the two. Tell us what your lecture is going to be about.
What I've done is put together some information over a couple of projects that we've implemented within the roads and maritime space in New South Wales. New South Wales in Australia is its largest state, and it's probably about 310,000 square kilometres, so a little bit bigger than Texas, but fairly significant. And being the only government agency, it's fairly challenging. And you mentioned about the security environment, and we were fortunate a couple of years ago to travel through the US, and we met with some really professional people over there from Homeland Security and law enforcement. And when we came back, we realised that we were probably around September 10th. We hadn't really had that sort of push. We were still facing the same problems that the agencies were facing prior to September 11. Some lack of communication between the agencies, sharing of information and that sort of thing. What we're trying to push is not waiting for that sort of incident to kick everything along, is to prepare and do as much as we can before that.
Now, it's interesting because New South Wales, it's about 310,000 square miles, and you have one police agency. So I thought it would be easier.
That's right.
I thought it'd be easier because we have dozens of police agencies in that kind of square mileage. There might be 1,000 police agencies in an area that big, right? So why is it that the sharing and the typical September 10th problems we have, why do those still exist? It seems like it'd be more streamlined to me.
It's still geography and still politics. It's even if we had similar to one of your larger states and counties and sheriffs, you still face those smaller issues. And I might say that I spent 25 years in law enforcement, and I thought it was probably the best way to do it as well, having one agency. But seeing the way that it operates in the US, it's actually probably a little bit better. It's just that the agencies are a little bit more streamlined in the sense that they're a little bit more focused on local issues, and they really get it. And they're to go to that small agency, if there's an incident in that area, you get such a wealth of information. And it's like that with RMS. Because RMS, although it takes responsibility for the entire state, we're broken up into regions and then into smaller areas. And even within those areas, there's individual assets. And when you go to those individual assets, everything's unique. The personalities, the layout, the geography, even the political nature of it. And that's the challenge, is to try and drill down into those individual areas. And security and critical infrastructure resilience, which is the department I head at the moment, is tasked with the entire state. So we have about, I think, around about 3,000 bridges in the state, but we only have identified about 16 as critical. So we maintain a security presence at those bridges. And when I first took up the role and went out to these individual bridges, I thought that it would be very easy to implement a template across the state. And after the second bridge, it was quite obvious that that was not the case, that each individual bridge is unique, and you have to approach it in a different way. And that's what this session basically is to break that down and look at the unique nature of each one of these bridges and the little tips and the little tricks about engaging with people. And one of those is, excuse me, one of those is they're very passionate about their assets. They're like a little family, their bridges and the tunnels, and that's seen as quite a negative thing, but it's actually a positive, because when you go to the bridge operators and they can see that you're passionate as well about protecting that asset, it breaks down a couple of barriers. And we've been to a couple of meetings where the first comment usually is, the secret squirrels are here, you know, what's this going to cost me? Or how how is this going to affect me? And what we try and do is break that down, talk to them, and within half an hour, we sort of bring them on the journey, and it makes it a little bit easier, and we integrate our projects into their operations.
Now, this is really fascinating. You brought up some really great points. I have always said my entire career, all security is personal, all security is local, all security is now.
Yeah.
So to your point, if you guys had a local, city in Australia PD, they'd be more vested in that city because they live there, they work there, and then they'd work with you to feed you information, be more cooperative. Where if you have the big government overview, I always tell people the FBI doesn't know jack about what's going on in my neighborhood. They don't work here. FBI doesn't live here, right? But my local PD, they're on it. So that's very interesting. So you're going to have to kind of create local relationships with non-PD entities to get the same information. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we deal with the local agencies, but there's some of these assets are quite isolated. They're a long way away. So even the local police officers that are based in the small towns, they have a really good relationship with our staff because they work with them every day. So we're able to work with the counter-terrorism and the intelligence agencies in the city to get the information. But then when we go out to the small towns and we work with the assets, we cultivate that relationship as well. So that can be a little bit testy to negotiate that sort of the political nature of it. You don't want to push one aside and focus on the other. So it's very much a trick. And I know one of the last projects that we did at a lift bridge, or one of our operating bridges, 2 hours away from one of the local towns, and they were very much hesitant about installing security systems on their bridge. So we involved the local police, and we were telling them how important it was, and some of the benefits that we can provide, not just securing, but some maintenance issues and some monitoring. Some of our cameras can give us early warning of river level rising and those sort of things. But what we realised when we first went in is they have a small control room, and there's a panel on the wall, and it has, I think, about 12 lights. And as long as those lights are all green, it means that the system is operating as per normal. Now, he's got to drive 2 hours out to that bridge to check that board. So what we did was we moved one of our cameras, and now we can provide him with access through an iPad to that, so he can look, and if he sees the 12 lights, then that's fine. If there's a problem, then he goes. So it's saving him 4 hours driving in a day. So once you do that at that bridge and you get that acceptance, it starts to filter throughout the region and then filter through some of the other assets, because they meet on projects and maintenance issues, and they say the same story. So now that it's been a long time, it's been almost 4 years, but now we're starting to get into these assets. We're getting a little bit of acceptance, and I might say that some assets are actually calling us now to come in and do assessments of their assets because they know we're coming in to protect that asset.
Very interesting. Now, of course, you took away his overtime checking those lights, so he might get you one day on that. But a built-in.
But yeah, I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but overtime is not a huge issue here. That would have been in his normal shift. So yeah, overtime's not an issue over here. It's a public department and public money.
All right, good. Mr. Paul Drucker, he's going to lecture at GSX this summer in September in Las Vegas, and he's going to talk about an Australian perspective on a security systems installation project and how he works with his department and local agencies and governments to make this all work. It's a little different than the U.S., and I want you guys to attend this lecture because you're going to get some ideas on how not to do the project, right, Paul? That's kind of one of the things we're going to take away from your lecture. So thanks for coming on ASIS TV.
That's exactly right. Sorry, mate. That's exactly right. We made a lot of mistakes. It's not been perfect, and it's not been easy along the journey. So that's the whole thing, is that to come along and to kind of get some insights. So that the people at the session don't make the same mistakes. And also there's a little bit of background and some training on kangaroos. So it doesn't make much sense, but it will if you come to the session.
All right. Paul, thanks for coming on ASIS TV.
Thanks, Chuck.